The following program does not necessarily represent the views and opinions of Reality Radio 101, its advertisers and sponsors, or its listening audience. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Bea Psychology Radio Show with psychologist, author, and speaker, Dr. Anna Baranowski, where mind, mood, and what matters to you are discussed. We're broadcasting live from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, on Reality Radio 101. Our email address is instudio101@gmail.com. And now, your host of the Bea Psychology Radio Show, Dr. Anna Baranowski.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be with you again today. We have, once again, a wonderful author with us who comes with a very interesting background. Remember, we're focused today on bearing witness to your experiences, life evolving, and understanding what your fears and stressors lead you to. And so we have a great author to really help us look into that. This is Dr. Bea MacKay, and she's actually in Vancouver, so she's in Canada along with me. She's a registered psychologist, and she's been practicing for 30 years, and it looks like she has come out with some pretty gorgeous books. One of them, which we're going to focus on quite a bit today, is Let Go of the Outcome and Let Things Fall Together, which is just filled with gorgeous images. Tell us again, Bea, just for a moment, what is the name of the person who does your gorgeous images in your book?
Leslie Wexler.
Leslie Wexler is the artist in your book, and I just have to say, just looking at the book itself, it's pretty beautiful. So that actually reinforces a lot of the really profound teachings in this particular book. And there are two more. One is called To You Work, How to Work with the Self in Conflict. And the other book is called The Power of Connection, How to Process Emotion in Turbulent Times. And a lot of this work is really focused on how to make sense of your emotions, how to live with them, how to embody them with some grace. It seems that Dr. Bea has a broad experience in working with relationships, family, and communications, not just with others, but really how those communications work when you're connecting with yourself as well. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but I want to tell you a little bit more about the interesting work that Dr. Bea has focused on. She talks about something called a seasonal split, why October and November see a surge in divorce and breakup decisions, effective strategies for combating seasonal depression, and one that I find very interesting because of all the work that I do with trauma is that trauma itself isn't inherently harmful, but rather it's an unaddressed, unhealed trauma that disrupts lives and well-being. So anything really, the stuff that we do not work through can come to the surface very easily. I want to remind people that we are delighted to have you listening today, and that if you're interested in asking any questions or you have a story to share or something that you want to raise with us, it's in studio101@gmail.com. And our producer has just informed me that we are now crossing 15,000 live listeners, or between 14 and 15,000, depending on the show. So I just want to thank all of you for really tuning in. I know even an hour for some of us is a lot to dedicate. So thank you for joining us. I'm really delighted to be with you, and I want to really start with Dr. B's um, gratitude section in the book. But first of all, Dr. B. MacKay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. It's an opportunity for me to share what I know I've learned over the years, and I really want to share it with the world.
Well, I'm getting a feeling of that in terms of the sweetness and the sincerity in this book. I was just really struck by the content, and not only the client stories and your approaches, but also some of your own personal stories and how they really resonate. It's like you've learned through your own life as a window into the world of pain and suffering, really, is how it looked to me as I was reading it. And I wanted to just start with this really lovely section. It's actually at the end of the book rather than the beginning. That's not always how we start. But it's a gratitude journal in a way. Be is grateful for the following. There are so many things in my life for which I'm grateful. I'm most grateful for going through the emotional healing of therapy in my 30s. Since I was 8 years old, my mission in life has been to help others in a significant way. I'm having so much fun and getting satisfaction and fulfillment from achieving my mission. Thanks are always appreciated, but what makes my heart sing is hearing how people's lives have positively changed from working together. So that's a really lovely starting point. And maybe we could just start with that, the
I'd like
power of
to,
gratitude.
yeah, I'd like to share with you how I got to find out what is important in therapy. Early in my career, a doctor invited me out for dinner to give me feedback, and during dinner, she told me that she was confused that she refers a lot of her patients for therapy, and when at their next appointment, she asked them, how was the therapy? And she said, most of them say it was good to talk to someone. But she said to me, she said, when I refer my patients to you at their next appointment, they're already making the changes they need to make. And she says, what confuses me is they don't understand it's because of the therapy. And I was really gobsmacked at the time because I did not know I was doing something that initiated the change component in there. So this book, Let Go of the Outcome and Let Things Fall Together, is really sharing what I learned is what makes people tick it's the sensations, the quality of sensations that we experience that determine the meaning we make and therefore the action we take. And the thing is that we can change those very simply by breathing through the waves of sensations as they come. So that's what I learned, and that it's the quality of the sensations that determine how we, the meaning we make of our life and situations, and then the actions that we take.
I think that's lovely. It's interesting. I noticed you really pay attention to the detail. I'm gonna show you. I'm holding the bookmark that came with one of your books, and it says "Stay with the sensations. Emotions come in waves. Breathe through the waves of sensation. Another small wave will come. Breathe. You will think the waves are gone, and then a smaller wave will come. Breathe. So it's like even the bookmark, gives you a grounding into how to take care of yourself in those moments. And something as simple like this, it's a great
Mhm.
change the channel exercise. I like to think a lot about how to change channels when people
Yeah.
are like really deeply embedded into a mood or a state.
Mhm.
We need to actually employ change channels. So, even a bookmark like this is a great change the channel
Mhm.
exercise. And so, that in itself is a wonderful
Well,
thing.
I find that people usually have a sensation and then they shift into their left brain and analyze it. Well, why am I having this? Well, you know, that I mean, you can get the answer to that, but it doesn't really change anything. But if you just stay in your body and stay with the sensations and breathe through them, well, your brain will actually, the logical data and the sensory data will integrate, synthesize, and you'll create new neural pathways which have different sensations. And when you feel different, you make different meanings and you take different actions. See, and
Mhm.
it doesn't cost anything to do that. We were born knowing how to do it.
We were born knowing how to do it, and yet sometimes we need somebody to guide us in that and guide us to hold that space and even show up for us so that we're not holding that space alone. Even,
Yeah.
that sometimes is the scariest thing is learning how to navigate fully staying present for our own emotions. And that brings
Well,
me to your personal story. And this comes from your book. I'm going to just read this for a moment, and maybe you could walk us through how you learned how to face it. This is after you've finished your graduate training, and you write, I woke up to abject terror. It was 5 a.m. and the hotel room was dark. Today was the day I was presenting my first workshop at an international level. I was terrified. I felt as though I was going to die. I knew my terror was unnecessary given my circumstances. It was only a 1 hour workshop of basic material. Logically and rationally, I knew I was scaring myself. I knew I was overreacting. However, that did not stop the sensations of cold, white terror coursing through my body from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And I can tell you for sure that some people listening right now will be shaking their heads going, oh yeah, I've been there, been there. So why don't you help us to understand what you did to process that terror and why that was such a pivotal experience for you in terms of your own growth?
Well, it was a panic attack, and I discovered that if you stay with the sensations of terror, they will course through and they start huge, and you think, oh my goodness, I can't handle this. I'm having a heart attack or something. But if you just breathe through them, the waves will go down and get less and less and less, and eventually your brains will come together and create new neural pathways that create the panic is gone and just staying that. So fortunately, I knew what to do that day, and I I was able to use my hotel room as a container, and I was able to just lay in the bed and I just breathe through the sensation as they happen. And I got up 2 hours later and I was fine. I was very tired because that's a lot of energy your brain needs to make that kind of change. I was tired, but I was fine. And I went and I did my workshop. It was fine. And I haven't had a panic attack since then. And I really opened up my book with me having the panic attack because I wanted to let people know, this is how you can handle a panic attack. And if you know that, and then you can, this is how you can cure it, really.
Well, one of the things that stands out for me, as you describe this story, B, is the reality that sometimes when you're facing a panic attack, people want to just do 5 breaths and then they'll be done with it. But this is deep, deep processing to actually heal the body on a level that is profound. So, the 5 breaths is not going to do it. And as you said, it took quite a bit of time breathing and allowing whatever was surfacing to come to the surface. And I love the fact that there's an acceptance, an appreciation, and a softness towards yourself that, yeah, the truth was, it took a long time of staying with the breath, not betraying yourself, just really staying with it.
What
And
is I was that frightened.
yeah,
And doesn't matter whether it was I was overreacting or not anymore. So I just knew that I was this frightened, and I allowed myself to be that frightened, with the idea that it will go away if I stay with it. And that's, because I knew what to do, I was able to handle it well.
Yeah, you'd already graduated, you had your PhD at that point. You were now facing your own fears and taking yourself to a better place. I mean, sometimes this is exactly what we have to do. We have to grow ourselves up. And you were busy growing yourself up
Mm.
as you were entering into your adulthood. I always think, it doesn't matter actually how old we are. We can always learn new paths to stay the course with ourselves, to be our own um, wise counsel and to guide to a new and a better place within inside. Because, it's within inside that we are encountering most of our fears. True danger is usually a rare event unless you're living in a war zone, but true danger is a rare event. However, you write about your experience growing up in the 40s and 50s, the youngest daughter of farmers, neither of your parents going past grade 8, your parents valuing education, but they used corporal punishment. They strapped you
Yes.
when they felt that the children were not behaving the way they wanted to.
And it was
And you were frightened.
considered good parenting at that time.
That was considered good
Yes,
parenting. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And
Spare the
it's
rod and
interesting.
spoil a child.
Say it again.
Spare the rod and spoil a child. Even religion supported corporal punishment in that time.
Exactly. And it's interesting because in your book you write that even when your parents spoke, you got scared and you held your breath.
Yes.
And I wonder kind of um, how those early experiences helped you to do the work that you do throughout your career and today and the books that you've written.
Mhm. Well, it's from my personal therapy that I had way back then. That, for instance, an example would be, um, uh, in therapy, I had a memory come up, and the memory of is my mom and my other brother. My brother was 4 years older than I was, and I was 3.5, so he was be about 7. We were in front of the cast iron stove, and my mom was popping popcorn. Now, that was considered a happy, exciting thing in the 40s, popping popcorn. She'd take the cobs of black kernels and scrape them off and put the black kernels in the pot, and they would pop white, and it was magical when I was 3 years old. We were all crying, and I was confused, like, what on earth is this about? Why were we crying? It was a happy event, and it came up in therapy, and therapy ended, and it was like a hologram. It sort of just sat there, right? I knew there was something important in that. So I stayed with it, and it was noon hour. I had to go home. I had to, you know, pick up my kids, get them ready and get home and make dinner and get them to bed. And I managed to get them to bed at 8 o'clock at night, still with this sort of hologram of this memory of confusion. And I lay in bed I got myself into bed at 8 o'clock at night, and at 4 in the morning, I finally got it. We weren't crying about the same thing. We were crying because my mother was crying. I'm assuming that she had just strapped us. I'm suspecting maybe she caught us playing doctor or something. So she had strapped us, and she was crying because she felt remorse for what she'd done to us. We were crying because we had just been strapped. And when I understood that my mother felt remorse, my whole body just melted, and I was able to forgive her. And I found myself reaching out and touching people and being a warmer person as a result of that. So that's my experience that led me in my counseling career to know that when you stay with the images, you stay with the sensations, you will get to a new place and I've really changed since then.
Hmm. That's such a beautiful story of, really letting yourself do this deep
Yes,
work. It sounds like you had an incredible therapist at that time.
yes, I did. I did. I didn't know it at the time, but I had a Gestalt therapist who focused on the sensations.
Right. Let's talk about that Gestalt and Adlerian approaches. This is your
Yes,
background. Your dissertation was the Gestalt two-chair technique, how it
yes.
relates to theory. Walk us through this Adlerian approach and the Gestalt method, and why that became kind of the cornerstone of both your own treatment and the work that you developed later.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with the Adlerian part because that came with the wanting to find a parenting method that was not harsh and that would, children still need to be, you know, contained and helped and guided, but without being yelled at and without being, um, strapped or beaten. So I vowed I would never beat my kids, but I still had to, you still have to control them and parent them. So I looked for a parenting method that was, at the time, was the Dreiker's method, and it parented based on logical consequences and logical and natural consequences. And it gave strategies for how to parent. And so it just fit beautifully with me because it meant that I could parent my kids without yelling at them, without, wanting to hit them. And it's relationship building when you do that. So I did my Adlerian dissertation was on the Adlerian lifestyle analysis, how we all develop a modus operandi by around 6 years old for life. And it was 8 single case studies, and that's what I did for my Adlerian, my master's degree. Now for my doctorate, I found that the Gestalt two-chair technique was a very powerful technique, and I found it cut to the chase and got to the action component and the sensory component really quickly. So I learned it, and I found that therapists were not using it really correctly, and it could be harmful if they don't. It's such a powerful technique. So I decided to write a book on how to do it. So that's the manual for therapists. When I was writing the book, I kept saying to myself, it's not about the chairs, it's not about the chairs. So I woke up with a dream one night. The dream was, call it 2U work, because it's about the two parts of you that are in conflict.
So that's this book. It's called To You Work, How to Work with the Self in Conflict, and that's the basis of your um, two-chair technique.
Yeah.
So that is fantastic because I we do use this kind of approach, and I will really be interested in seeing what you put together here. Maybe we'll get you back on another time to talk about very, very specifically this approach
Mm.
that you're using,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to spend very much time talking about this, but the reality is this two-chair approach, just for people who are not familiar with it in the simplest terms, and please be, if I don't get this right, just correct me, jump in, okay?
Okay.
But really, what we're trying to do is identify two elements or characteristics. It could be a true person in your life, or it could be just a feature of your own character that you're putting in another chair and switching roles so that you can have a externalized conversation, either with a real person or with yourself, or a feature, an aspect of your personality or a quality that you're struggling with, and literally being able to change the perspectives by changing the chair that you're sitting in. So yeah, it is a fantastically powerful technique, and I was trained in it many years ago as well, and I love using two chair, and it is absolutely powerful and brings people to a new
Cuts to
place.
the chase so
Cuts right
quickly.
to the chase. You're right, absolutely.
Tend to think of it a little differently now. I think of it, we have a thinking self and we have an experiencing self. So, and it's the dialogue between, or the interaction between the thinking self and the experiencing self that's really key. So I'll have them say out loud what they do to themselves, and then have them go switch to the other chair and say, well, the experiencing self say, well, what do you experience when that part says that to you? And so I get at the sensations, and then I have them respond or react to them, and we go back and forth. And it's about the internal dialogue we have, which is key to how we feel about ourselves. Like we're usually opposed. If the experiencing self and the cognitive self are opposed, that's a problem. So my role is to change each one a little bit so they come together, so the energy is aligned.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I just think it's really worth a deeper conversation
Mhm.
for sure if you're
Sure.
open to it at some point, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think our listeners would find it interesting to hear a little bit more about how you have fine-tuned and illustrated the work to really help people understand how to do this work in a very deep and meaningful way with the clients that they
Mhm.
work with.
Mhm.
Um, okay. Um, Listen, I know that you've done some pretty interesting things, and you have illustrated this book in a really incredible way. And I want to start with something a little further in the book where you talk about instinctive survival behaviors and how behaviors are so ingrained in our DNA that people's bodies and minds behave as though their fears are life threatening. Let's just start with that, and maybe you could help our listeners to understand that from your perspective.
Well, that's what I was talking about, is that it's like our thinking self scares our experiencing self. And it often, what we're trying to avoid really is unpleasant sensations. That's what we're trying to avoid. We don't realize it. We think it's, oh, well, we're trying to avoid this situation. Well, it's not, yes, it's a situation, but it's the sensations that that situation evokes that we're trying to avoid. And so it's like, uh, I I work towards. I'll step in and I'll advocate for the experiencing self and say to the critic, you know, you're hurting yourself, and what's your intent here? And I find out usually they're trying to protect themselves, but they're hurting themselves in the process. And so and I say, well, did you mean to do that? No, I didn't. Well, let's look at what did you mean to do? Protect, okay. And then we try and get the experiencing self to talk and say what it needs and what it doesn't need to the critic. And that's how and it takes it deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper till we get to a core uh, life experience. And often it's that core life experience that the person was, if it's negative, and it's usually negative,
Mhm.
is that they're terrified of, and they don't ever want to feel those sensations again, so that they will do anything but um,
Yeah,
keep.
that's right. That's why sometimes, we'll start a session with a client and they want to talk about anything other than going into deeper processing and experiencing, because it's terrifying. I mean, the reality is this work, although very meaningful, when we start to do real deep personal work, it means really sitting with what is surfacing, and like that takes courage and
Yes.
having a good guide. And people
Yeah.
don't always have a good guide, so it's nice to hear your story. You also have a personal story about what sounded to me like fawning in your marriage, using seduction for 29 years and it working until it didn't work.
Mhm.
This is one of those stories about, you didn't mean to hurt yourself, but here it has been a very painful time. Can you tell us a little bit about what realization, how you arrived at the realization that you couldn't do this fawning anymore, that it was no longer serving you, and it was kind of an old pattern, or what you called an old modus operandi.
Mm-hmm. So it took me years to figure out that that's what I was doing, and it realized that I could change myself. I couldn't necessarily, well, I didn't change, couldn't change my partner. So I worked on changing myself. And I looked at my behaviors and I changed them bit by bit. And then I stopped doing that. And I'm not sure how to explain what happened, but when I stopped doing that, then he responded differently.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, the marriage broke down.
Because you were no longer playing the contracted role that you always had. So
Yes.
that is exactly what can happen, that sometimes we get to a place where we ourselves have grown beyond the relationships that we're in, and it's okay to behave in a new way, but we cannot absolutely know if our spouse or a partner or a friend or a cousin or whoever it is in our life is up to the challenge of facing this growth, because sometimes as we grow, the relationships around us just simply do not. I'm kind of marveling a little bit because I have an old friendship, and I had been looking at this world through a different lens in the last while, and this individual, instead of kind of simply shutting down the conversation completely, started to ask questions about it. And I think it was really frightening for my friend to ask questions rather than just shut down the conversation. And wherever that lands, that's fine. But the reality is we don't want to stop our own growth for other people's comfort. And yet there is a tendency to do that because most of us are quite afraid of facing life alone. So I want to talk a little bit about, before we move on to our questions, because we're piling up on the questions. And again, I love it when we get these questions because they make our radio show so rich. So if people want to ask anything or share something, in studio101@gmail.com. I'm going to get to those emails in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to talk about the physiology of breath, because I use breath and somatic work all the time in my work. And I want to hear a little bit about your perspective of breath and why breath is so important.
Well, breath to me is about keeping and I use the metaphor of doorway. It's like the corpus callosum is like a doorway that joins the left brain and the right brain. And if we're breathing, that doorway will be open, and the two types of data, the logical data and the sensory data, can come together, synthesize, create the new neural pathways. If we're holding our breath, that doorway is closed, and those two different types of data cannot get together, and so you can't form. But it's the pressure, the buildup of it, that's horrible. And so people really shut down because if we're breathing through it, they keep that door open, and then your brain just does what it's capable of doing. It creates new neural pathways, and when you feel different, you behave differently.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's take some of these questions, because like I said, we do have quite a few. Oh, this is great. This is exactly what I wanted to ask you about too. This is from Frank, and Frank is asking a question. Thank you so much, Frank, for writing in. Good afternoon, doctors. A question. What is the decision quiz and what is it used for? Thanks, from Toronto. That's from your website.
Yes. I have created decision quizzes. They come out of my research. I did my dissertation. I did what was on decision making based on the two chair technique. Like what is it that makes the change? I'm also always interested in the change component, because you can talk and talk and talk therapy, but if you don't get to change, you get stuck in the talk. And so I I I had to choose a decision to to do my focus on, and I chose people who were already in therapy, deciding on conflicted about whether they should end the relationship or not. So I did 8 single case studies with people, and I had to create a sort for which people would sort at the beginning of 2-chair work, and then after 6 sessions of therapy, they sorted the same items again, and we could tell from the way they sorted if they were still conflicted, or if they were conflicted from they were decided from a conflicted sort of thing, like I'll stay for the children's sake, or I'll stay for if I'm too afraid to be alone. That's decided, but it's from a conflicted sense, or if it's the person has made a decision from an integrated sense of self, which is the healthy one. Like, it's okay for me to do what's right for me. So I created this sort as a methodology. Then after I got my dissertation, my PhD, I created it into an internet decision quiz.
So if people are interested, if you go to the website BEAinbalance.com, you'll see that there's an option to select quizzes. And that quizzes option takes you to a page called decisionquiz.com. And you can complete either a relationship quiz or a job quiz. I do think you have to sign up for it in order to get that quiz. That's right, right?
Yes, you have.
And then you can kind of see where it takes you to. But I was curious about it as well. So thank you for asking that question, Frank. Like I said, we've got quite a few questions. So let's see what else we can do with this. Yes. Oh, this is from a fan. Beautiful graphics and pictures in the book. Love it. So yes, they are really gorgeous.
I would like to explain how I came to work with my graphic artist.
Yeah, please do.
I had written the book and couldn't get it was during COVID, I couldn't get a publisher because publishers were just inundated with manuscripts. So I had to self-publish. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I think in pictures. So I would talk to my graphic artist, and I would tell her the picture in my head, and she would create it and put it on the page. And so what we have is each spread has the logical data on one side and the sensory or the right brain on the other side. And it encourages you to use both brains at once, which consolidates learning when you're using both your right and brain together at once. And this was just because I didn't know what I was doing, and Leslie was really good at creating the images in my head.
Wow, that's a nice story, and pulling all that creativity together. That's absolutely lovely. Yeah, and I mean, the image is really, okay, the book is great. And if you read it and you're really paying attention to some of the exercises and stories, it's very engaging. But then just about on every other page, you have this fabulous image that really does reinforce the work. So yeah, that's really great. This is from Bob. Thank you for your question, Bob. Bob says, hi, a very simple question. Does breathing help with anxiety? Thank you. Okay. I'm going to hand that back.
I see anxiety not as a condition, but as a way that one scares oneself. We have anxiety because our thoughts are scaring ourselves. We don't maybe own them, but we just get these horrible thoughts and we think, oh, I'm anxious. And yes, so what breathing does is it helps you calm down and interrupts the scary thoughts, because it's the scary thoughts that you don't even know you're thinking. And that's what I'll do in the 2U work, is I will get a person to scare themselves. Then I'll come over to the experiencing self and say, well, what's it like to be treated that way? And the person, well, it's scary and it's hard, And then I support the experiencing self and say, well, what do you want to say to this part? And so that's how we get the internal dialogue. So when you're anxious, you need to say, I'm scaring myself, rather than I'm anxious.
I'm
And
scaring
when you
myself.
own it, you can do it more, or you can do it less, or you could do something totally different when you own it.
Sounds like you've combined breathing with installing the positive languaging, changing the languaging, and the two chair technique. Like it's a nice kind of segue with all of these different
Mm.
approaches. And, certainly with breathing, it is a fantastic way to get access to the nervous system and give the nervous system
Well, that's the
particularly a
brain.
different message that in this moment
Mhm.
you are safe. So I really like the use of
When I
breathing
was
as
writing the
well.
book, people kept saying to me, I can't remember which is the right brain and which is the left brain. So I said they know what the left brain is. So I decided to call the right brain the sensory brain because it's
Right.
really the sensations. And that's why I don't use right brain in the book. It's just simpler to say, seeing as it's the sensory data that's there. And then there's the logical data. When you bring the two together, they form different neural pathways.
Beautiful. This is from Howard, who says, hello, Dr. Mackey has touched on the subject of nature healing. What is that exactly?
Well, if we understand, like babies are born knowing how to process our emotions, and if we allow someone to cry and fully, deeply, even though it seems like they're making more out of it than it should be, it doesn't matter whether they're making more out of it. It should be. It's that in that moment, like say a child asks for a cookie for dinner, and you say, well, it's just before dinner, you can't have one. And the child would just throw themselves on the floor and cry like they've been, something horrible. But if you just let them cry and let them feel what they're feeling in that moment, they're devastated and they'll respond very quickly. And it's this, we unlearn this in our cultures, in our families, and just in life in general. We unlearn this processing.
We've really done a bad job of teaching people to just stuff it down.
Yes.
And you captured an interesting commentary from Princess Diana's book. In your book, you write, um, Diana, in her own words, she talks openly about her emotions. After 7 years, Diana is fed up with trying to win her husband's affections back from his mistress, Camilla. She decides to confront Camilla. Although terrified, she bolsters her courage and is determined to do it. She picks an occasion where there's a gathering to which she's not invited and shows up. She finds Camilla and demands that Camilla leave her husband alone. Having achieved her goal, she leaves. She describes the emotional ride back to Buckingham Palace. Once she'd confronted Camilla and was in the car, she let go and cried to the depths. By sobbing deeply, Diana breathed through the intensely unpleasant waves of sensation. Her brain created new neural pathways that changed the quality of the sensations, transcending her old experience. And from this process, she gained a new perception of herself and her circumstances. This changed her behaviors going forward. I loved that passage because it seems to do such a good job of expressing
Mhm.
all of the teachings in kind of one story.
Yes, it's this perfect example, and she's so a model for caring about people, and so I that's why I use that, because it's a perfect example of a celebrity that we really admire and we can learn from.
Hmm. Yeah, and she was able to have this full release, not by stuffing down her
Mhm.
emotions and being stoic, but by letting herself really have her own experience with it.
And I see that it's like that's the distraction. Like when we heal, we heal our brain will heal us in some ways that's positive or negative, but sometimes they heal us in a way that's not good, and we have to deconstruct it.
Hmm.
So the EMDR, eye movement and
Desensitization and
desensitization,
reprocessing.
reprocessing,
Yeah. Hmm.
is about that. It's like you take a painful memory and you deconstruct it by breathing through whatever the sensations are and to the depths for as long as it takes. And it may take several times or something to get to the bottom. But once it's deconstructed, then the parts of you can come together in a new way that you couldn't. And that's the thing, let things fall together. When you deconstruct it and don't have the intent to block the sensations, you just you just go with it. It will deconstruct by itself, but then your brain will come together in a new way and make new neural pathways which have different sensations.
Nice, nice. Okay, this is from Lenny, who says, hello. Regarding relationships, it is always seems to be regarding relationships. Yes, I agree, Lenny. Why is it so hard for someone to find a partner and stay with it? I have known people that have broken off relationships in 5 years, 20 years, 30 years, etc. Do we actually just get bored with people? Thank you.
I don't think so. I think that we need to feel connected to people. Like, it's that the connection, and what makes one person feel connected to another may be different from anybody else. But we need, in this kind of crazy environment that we arrive in through no choice of our own, we need to attach to something or somebody. And if we can feel safe and secure and accepted, then we'll stay with that person. But often I find that people, well, what I found early in my career was that I'd start with couples counseling. They'd come in and, well, one or both had one foot out the door of the marriage. After 4 sessions, it was going so well that, they started to come together again. And then about 5th, 6th session, I found that one or both would unconsciously sabotage the relationship. I thought, what's going on? It was going so well. It was going so well. It was going so well. It was because it was going so well that they weren't, they had shifted from one foot out the marriage to, well, okay, I've got both feet in here. There's uncomfortable sensations, and they didn't know how to handle them. And when we get uncomfortable sensations, we tend to do something to try and make them stop.
So sorry, when you say uncomfortable sensations, are you referring to discomfort with intimacy, like with closeness,
yes,
not necessarily sexual?
Yes, over time. Like, you can have so many neural pathways for intimacy and then, but when it goes longer than you're used to, you get uncomfortable with them. If you knew that was just that they were new and different, you breathe through them and you breathe through them, and you can, that's what I learned with couples, that they would sabotage them because it was going too well for too long. They didn't have enough neural pathways. But when I learned that, I said, okay, now things are going so well. I want you to have a fight before you come in next time. And that broke the tension.
Okay.
And they either had the fight, and then we worked through what the fight was about. And I believe that every couple needs a good working relationship to handle problems and situations. So that's what I work towards. And they either had it or they didn't have it. And I say, well, how did you prevent it? You usually would have prevented. How did you handle that situation? So that's what I find, that people will sabotage a relationship when it's going longer than they have the neural pathways for. But if they can say to their partner, things are going so well, I'm uncomfortable with it, and then can talk about that, then they increase the comfort level.
Got it. Okay. Here's a question, and it relates specifically to couples. This is from Gloria. Thank you, Gloria. Hi, doctors. When couples go to couples counseling, doesn't the therapist always try to compromise any issues between a couple? What about if one person of the couple is actually wrong with a behavior? Shouldn't they get the gist of the session and be told that they are wrong?
Well, it's about framing it a way, then they can see that what they're doing is shooting themselves in the foot, and how they could be differently so they could get what they want. So it's about reframing situations so that people can see, okay, this is not working for me. I'm not wrong. It's not wrong so much as this is not working for me. You know, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? That's the kind of thing that people get stuck on.
And there's a lot of kind of in session. I've done a lot of couples therapy in my career as well, and often couples where there's been a history of trauma, and I see pretty consistently that couples can actually arrive at a new place in their relationship and how they navigate when they learn to actually stay deeply and fully connected with each other as they're listening and learning from each other, um, even when they're hearing things they may not like. And one of the things that happens when, we have intimacy difficulties, and when I say intimacy, I'm talking about just connecting with another person, is that we can shut down if we hear something that we don't like. So, for example, if you've identified, oh, maybe they're just doing something wrong, but if you cannot say what that wrong thing is, what is hurting you, what the struggle is, without your partner, your spouse, shutting down because it feels so tough for them to hear negative feedback, then you're going to be stuck in this place, this rigid place. So, part of the, good therapy with a couples therapist is bringing dialogue to a deeper place of listening and hearing and understanding. People come up with new solutions on their own that way. It's not simply about the therapist saying it's right or wrong. It's
What I
about
do is I
how do
try.
you arrive to this place. What were you going to say, B?
When I work with a couple, usually what happens, I get them dialoguing with each other and their issues start happening in front of me. And that's when you
Yes.
can really work with them because what's happening for you right now, and when you get someone to actually help them articulate what's happening, often people can't even articulate what's happening to them. They just know that they're uncomfortable. And when I help them articulate what's going on for them, and I'll say, that's just going on for your partner. You didn't know that, right? No, I didn't know it. Now that you know it, what changes for you? And so I get it going right there in this
Mm,
session, and
mm.
that's a really productive time.
Hey, this is interesting. This one is from Ken. Ken says, did Dr. MacKay's book on dreams become published? I heard about it a while ago. I'm not sure. Do you have a book on dreams?
I have one half written.
Half written. Okay, well, we'll have to hear more about that when it comes out because that's a very interesting area.
Yeah,
Um,
I know it is, and I have figured out a way to work with your dreams without having to know what they mean. And it's so simple and it's so easy and it like there's no jargon in my therapy. You don't have to learn any jargon or put anybody in a box like a diagnosis and things.
yeah.
It's just everyday language.
What is the approach? Can you give it to us in a nutshell?
The
Your dream approach, you said it's very
yes.
easy and
My
simple.
dream approach is people uh, you don't have to know what it means. So write down your dreams and bring them in. Like I had a man come in and he says, I'm having nightmares every night. I says, okay, well, write them down, bring them in. So I helped him work through, re-enter the dream while awake. Like this is in therapy.
Hmm.
And I want you to imagine it turning out well. Now you have to let go of logic, which is the hardest part for people to do, let go of logic and have it turn out well. So he did that. We said, okay, now 3 different endings, totally different endings. And you could even have Superman come in and help you, whatever your childhood superhero was. You can even imagine them. And
I love
then
that.
yes. And so, and several weeks later, he says, I no longer have nightmares. If I wake up with a bad dream, I just lay there and imagine it turning out well.
Beautiful. There's actually some research on that very similar approach that you just described, B. So there's actually some current research on that right now. I can't quote the research article because it's not in front of me, but I read it not too long ago. So you're completely right on track because it's being supported in the research literature. um,
But
excellent.
my
So
so
we only have a few more minutes, and we have a bunch of more questions. I'm really so delighted to hear from so many people today. It's a really popular topic. So here's another one, and I think this is very relevant for a lot of people. Is be an advocate of mental health wellness in the workplace environment. Our company is looking at that now.
yes, of course, I'm an advocate. When it's like in a marriage, if things are working well, the couple will be able to solve things. In business, if coworkers are operating, functioning well with each other, there'll be a positive ripple effect throughout the whole group. I'm just going to tell you my earliest memory is I'm 9 months old in my high chair in the farm, and my mother's there, and she's just trying on her first new pair of glasses, and her they'd just been her family had come visiting, and they picked up the mail, and because we had to pick up the mail from the local general store and delivered them. And she was the center of attention. And my mother was awash with attention. She loved being the center of attention. And I, as a little girl in my high chair, was awash with when my mom was happy, the world was happy, and just ripple effect out. So, what am I doing in my life? I'm trying to make myself and everybody happy, even at the ripe old age of sage age that I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
But when things are working well, everybody benefits. There's a ripple effect out with everyone.
For sure. I want to repeat the name of the book, the current one. It's called "Let Go of the Outcome and Let Things Fall Together" by Bea MacKay, and you could easily get a copy of it. It's available for purchase at beinbalance.com. That's BEA inbalance.com, all one word. You could also see it on the blog of our website, so you can find it there as well.
We
Um,
could give you an
People
autograph.
want to know, B,
Mhm.
what kind of farm you were raised on, whether it was crops, dairy, or beef.
Well, when I was young, it was a dairy farm. And then when I was a teenager, it was chickens. And I remember my 14th summer, I washed, I collected and packed and washed and packed 3,000 eggs a day all summer. That
Wow.
was my summer job on the farm.
Wow, that is hard work. Oh my
Mm.
goodness, you must be so disciplined and strong. They also want, this is from Jim, who's asking if you do online sessions or online seminars.
I do online sessions. Yes, I work with couples online. I work with individuals online. Yes, I do. I haven't given an online seminar yet, but it's in my to-do list.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And again, I'm just going to remind you that if you're looking for some information, you could find it at beainbalance.com, all one word, and you find a whole lot of stuff. The B is grateful for the blog, the store, quizzes, resources, and the services, including, I guess, online. So that's a lot of resources and a lot of material, and that's great. So I want to just say that we're just about finished. Um, B, is there something that we didn't talk about yet that you feel we should spend at least a few minutes before we log off? Whether
Yes.
it's modus operandi or
Oh,
deconstruction or whatever it is.
it's about doing couples work on your own. You can do couples work on your own. People think they invite their partner to go for couples therapy, and the partner refuses. I do a lot of couples counseling, and I've never seen the partner because it's a dance. It's like interactive. So if you change your dance steps, your partner will usually change in reaction or in response to your change. So you can go to therapy and do couples care therapy on your own.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that. I mean, it makes sense because we're now dealing with the individual, and no individual changes without it having some kind of change on the relationship itself. I guess just one last thing that I want to say. Thank you so very much. This is Dr. Bea MacKay, who has joined us from Vancouver. Thank you so very much, our wonderful listeners, and all of your fantastic questions. It has been a delight. Dr. Bea MacKay can be reached at her own website at beinbalance.com. And she has some pretty beautiful books out there. So thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone. And thank you, Dr. MacKay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Bear Psychology Radio Show with your host, Dr. Anna Baranowski, right here on Reality Radio 101.